You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This week we are talking about the American monster film Godzilla vs. Kong, directed by Adam Wingard and released March 31st, 2021.
Brand new.
Yes, we're talking about a movie that's still in theaters right now. It's also available to stream and buy through HBO Max and other stuff, but it is in theaters.
Yes. I've actually been to the movies. Not to see this one. I'd already seen this one. But I did go to see another movie. One that's not in our Run for Your Lives universe. It was a really cool experience to be back in a theater. And, you know, they put things in, guidelines in place to make sure people felt safe and was masking. So, yeah, it was definitely a different experience. But I still had a lot of fun. And it felt kind of special to be back in a movie theater and have that big screen to watch film.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't been back yet. I gotta find the right movie that makes it worth doing so. I don't know. Yeah. Now the one that, because you saw Nobody, so.
Yes, I did.
That's one that, yeah, I need to go check that out. But I'll also have it available here at home in like a couple of days, so it's kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, last movie I saw in theaters, I think I've mentioned that on here before, was Sonic the Hedgehog, which is, it was so long ago. It was good. I'm glad that's the one that was the last one I watched because I enjoyed it. But
yeah, my last one before this was The Hunt. And it didn't end up being what I was expecting it to be. And so I was a little disappointed. But now I feel like, okay, I saw Nobody. It was great. So that is the memory that I have, is going to the movies and seeing that. So I'm super stoked to go back potentially next month to see a little movie called A Quiet Place 2.
That's exactly what I was about to say, is I think that's the next one. That's one that I have to go see in theaters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to be the one. But it's not, because the theater I usually go to is like one of those like full service with a bar and restaurant and stuff. Do not do that one for Quiet Place. I actually then went to like the local theater that doesn't have all that because it just needs to be quiet. That's the point.
Yes, it does. And sometimes people just can't be quiet. It's very noisy. The cool thing when I went to see Nobody is there was really no noisy person in there. It was kind of cool. It was all adults, and it was a place where they serve you food, but you kept your mask on, only taking it off when you needed to eat. And everyone was spaced out by rows and by feet, and it was pretty incredible. But
that's cool.
It was good because there was no one there, making no unnecessary noise. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
Nice. That's good.
But I'm super excited that we're covering this because it was supposed to come out in May. And they moved it up, so I'm really grateful that they did.
Yeah, got a little early. Worked out perfect. We've been working our way through these movies in the Monsterverse, so it's good to finally get this one, which is the final one for now.
Yes.
They have no actual plans, which, they left it open to where they could do more, and they might do more, and they probably will, but...
But not right now. This is the only film, I believe, that didn't have an after-credit scene.
Yeah. I actually had to look that up after I finished watching it. I was like, they didn't have a post-credit scene, because all of these have. And then they were like, well, yeah, because they have no plans for anything in the future as of right now, so there's no point in it. There actually was one that was filmed, but they ended up putting it into the actual film. They didn't say what it was, so I don't know exactly what to look for. But they said they had a post-credit scene that they filmed, but then they slotted it in somewhere else in the movie with a different context, but it worked.
Okay.
But he didn't say what it was. So
wow.
I'm curious.
That is interesting. I feel like we're going to have to kind of dig on that and see if we can figure out exactly what they were talking about. when movies come out, there's a lot of press about them, but then there's these little secrets that they keep to themselves for a while. So
yeah,
maybe it's something that they'll give us as like a present later on.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk about this one, see what you thought, and kind of give. I've got a lot of thoughts about this movie that run the gamut from all over the place. So it'll be interesting for sure.
I think so too, because we've talked about this, and a few months ago, I went into this film thinking I'm Team Godzilla all the way, because that's all I had seen was that first movie. But then I fell in love with Kong Skull Island, which is still my favorite movie of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really conflicted about having these two beloved titans go against each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot to break down in this one. So I feel like I'm just going to start off with our behind the scenes stuff, and we should just really get to it.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Okay, so this was filmed in Kualoa Ranch in Hawaii, which is where they filmed some of the Jurassic scenes, which I love so much. Was also filmed in Brisbane and the Gold Coast in Australia, and some in Hong Kong. It's the fourth film in Legendary's Monsterverse. American screenwriter Max Borenstein, who worked on the first 3 films in the Monsterverse, also co-wrote with Eric Pearson, who is well known for his work on Thor Ragnarok. Another favorite. It's the first film in 59 years to have both King Kong and Godzilla. That film, the last film, was called King Kong vs. Godzilla in 1963. It is a hit on HBO Max as the most successful launch on the new platform's brief history, because HBO Max has not been around that long. No. So I'm sure they're happy with the hits that this movie got. There were 4 different taglines. One Will Fall, which I think is the one that most of us saw over and over again. God versus King. The Second Coming. And Our Fate, Their Fight, which I thought actually sums things up in an interesting way when you get into the meat of the movie. So the budget for this movie was between 155 and 200 million. The box office draw, which I think is pretty good in the pandemic days, is just under 300 million. It earned 122 million on its opening weekend, which made it the biggest movie opening during the pandemic. Additional money was invested in marketing, which created a break-even budget of 330 million. So the movie hasn't really broken even yet, but I think considering everything that we've learned during this pandemic, I think, bringing in just under 300 million is pretty good. And it's still going to be in the theaters for a little while yet. So the movie is the shortest film in the Monsterverse and comes in at 113 minutes. And Pate, bring on the synopsis.
All right, and this synopsis actually comes from Warner Brothers specifically. This is their actual official one that they put out, but I liked it. It says the epic next chapter in the cinematic Monsterverse pits 2 of the greatest icons in motion picture history against one another. The fearsome Godzilla and the mighty Kong, with humanity caught in the balance.
Ooh, you just didn't know how much humanity was caught in the balance until you saw what was going on outside of Kong and Godzilla's world.
Yeah.
A little surprise. You know what was cool about that, too, is one of our friends actually mentioned a couple of times during Hangouts that he thought there would be a third Titan. And it was going to be man.
Yeah. Well, he talked about, because you're referencing Mark, because he talked about that on our King of the Monsters coverage that he was on with us.
Yeah.
He even said that, So
he's right, of course. But he knows the lore so much better than I do. So I think it's cool that he brought that up, and we got to see that here on this film.
Oh, man. We will have, I have some notes to talk about that for sure when we get there.
Yeah, I did not know we were going to see that in this film.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. And I I didn't watch it until last night, the day before we were recording this. And as that, I'll say it because, anybody listening to this should have watched the movie. As we get the reveal of Mechagodzilla, I literally was like, I'm surprised I did not get spoiled of this. I'm surprised that I did not know this was going to happen. Because I figured people would be talking about this.
Yes.
But immediately, because I remember, like, before I had seen it, we were joking about stuff. Like, sometimes in our group we like to give fake spoilers for things just to kind of be funny. And I was like, oh yeah, like when Godzilla has to fight like Mechagodzilla, because I'm thinking it's like this like, real cheesy thing from the old movies. So I joked about Mechagodzilla. And then when it showed up, I was like, damn it, they actually did it. Like,
yeah, I really didn't know. I did not expect it. I was really conflicted going in thinking, no, I don't want anything to happen to either of them. They're both good guys. They need to stay. What are you talking about? One of them's going to fall. This can't happen. And then we learn about Mecha. And that just changed everything.
Yeah.
There were some really cool things about this movie. There were.
Oh, absolutely. There was moments, which again, I can mention what they are, and we'll talk about them in better depth in a little while. But when they first entered Hollow Earth, my jaw dropped. Like I felt kind of like a kid in that moment.
Yes.
Because especially, and it helps that we've been talking about these movies and seeing that storyline like progress.
Yes.
But it was cool to actually be like, oh, they did it. Like, it's here. It's actualized and real. Here is Hollow Earth. They've created it and shown it in this film. Like, it exists. It's part of this universe, and we're seeing it now. And that was so cool to me.
I totally agree with that. Mm-hmm. Because that's how I felt as well. I just was like blown away, overwhelmed by all of the little things that we got to see. And there were some components of it that made me think, oh, this is kind of like Skull Island. It's not Skull Island, but it kind of reminds me some of the habitat stuff. Reminded me of Skull Island until they started going. And Kong goes from the ground to the ceiling in this cool flip of... like, basically all I can think is calling it the Upside Down, even though I know that's a Stranger Things reference, and it doesn't really mean the Upside Down like Stranger Things, but because
it's the same place, but it's just the way that Hollow Earth works is there's this weird gravitational phenomenon that it, works under because it's the center of the Earth, so gravity kind of has this ball. So it's really creative and really unique.
I loved it. I loved that part. That was like one of my major notes, like to talk about at the end of the podcast. If we didn't talk about it, was seeing that for the first time. It was just like this wonderful place. And it brought out all these kid feelings. Like I just was feeling like, oh, it's just, it was amazing. I really enjoyed that. I felt like the effects and the visual stuff in this movie was really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got some stuff in my notes to talk about visuals and stuff that I was like, man, that's just super cool.
I know. This is a fun one. I feel like we're going to be like bringing up stuff that just makes us feel like we're, kids again, and we can just, nerd out over it. I feel like this is going to be a good nerd out.
Yeah.
But we should probably start with our character stuff, because that we like to break down.
Oh, yeah. Lots of interesting characters. And then, in our notes, we do have some of them kind of bunched together because there's like little group storylines going on, and that's fine. And so I'm excited. But there are, there's one character really that stands up like alone. I guess you can call him the lead in this movie. And that is Dr. Nathan Lind, played by the incomparable Alexander Skarsgård.
Yes. I'm wondering, too, if my favorite character is the same as your favorite character this time, but I guess we'll see about that as we go through the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So, we learned that Dr. Nathan Lind is a geologist and a cartographer. He's a failed writer because he's got boxes of books at his house from his Hollow Earth book, and I think he lost his brother, who was like a pioneer, who died on a mission trying to get to Hollow Earth. There was some sort of change in the gravity, and then debris crushed his ship. Say Say that 3 times fast.
Right.
So he seems like a likable guy.
Mm-hmm.
When Simmons from Apex comes to talk to him about joining him and going to Hollow Earth and how there's like a power source there, I don't think Lind really understood the complexity of what Apex and Simmons wanted the power source for.
Because I would give, like, maybe if there's any... Because I know you said, we'll talk about favorite characters. No, this was my favorite character, I think, was Nathan Lind. But there's a little complexity to him in that case that, like, he should have known that, like, whatever he was doing had some shady undertones to it. Because, like, it just seemed kind of obvious, like, right from the beginning.
Yes.
But then it just shows, like, he's maybe a little naive, but he wanted the best for it. I mean, I guess he had some kind of history with Dr. Andrews, with Eileen, and because she knew who he was when he showed up at Skull Island to talk her into this idea. But really, what the selling point was, and I don't think it was just a selling point that he told her to get her to be involved. I think he truly meant it, and that was his end plan of that. Was he wanted to help Kong in the process as well?
Yes, I think I think his heart was in the right place, very much like Dr. Andrews. Mm-hmm. They both wanted what was best for Kong, and exploring all of these places. I mean, he and his brother thought Hollow Earth existed, and I think he wanted to really go and see it for himself and see it, know for sure that it was there, but also trying to do something good for Kong and helping Apex, who has presented this pretty idea of using this power source and how it's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really give all the information that was needed.
Yeah. But again, that's this, to finally see his kind of life's work come to fruition and be like, now the world can see something come of this Hollow Earth stuff that I've been laughed at about for years. So it's definitely... It was in his wheelhouse. Like, it was something that, like, there was selfish reasons for him to be involved, even if they weren't necessarily harmful selfish reasons. But they were there. That's what that complexity of that character, that, like, he had stuff to gain from doing this as well.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. But I do feel, like we said, he had the best of intentions. Mm-hmm. I think that was apparent. I mean, he went to Dr. Andrews wanting to do something good. He didn't have all the information from Simmons. Not really. I mean, we saw at the beginning of this movie, Godzilla knew something was up. Knew it. And so it went to destroy that facility in Pensacola.
Yeah.
And this is what gets Simmons going on, well, we need to get this energy. But he's not giving the full information, which is Mecha is in production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how easily, like, the media and the world kind of turned on Godzilla. Oh, he's the villain now, and he's not the savior of humanity anymore because he attacked this cybernetics base. It was like, well, maybe you should look into the reason why he attacked this one specific place. Like,
yeah, why is this going on? I mean, Madison, who's this college student now, we saw her in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Madison is the one saying Kong wouldn't do this. She has to say it to her father. She says it to everybody. She just kept saying it, and no one was listening. So she decided to take matters into her own hands, and we'll talk about her in a little bit. Her little group of explorers that, they have an interesting adventure as part of this as well.
Mm-hmm. So we have more on Lind. Yeah, just like... I think I was trying to remember if it was his idea to use Kong to get to Hollow Earth, or if that's something that Simmons had kind of mentioned to him.
I think it was his idea, partially. I think in the conversation with Simmons, I think he came up with the idea of Kong being a Titan, potentially being able to get to Hollow Earth. And so he ran with it, and Simmons supported it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he kind of knew where to go and how to get him there.
Yes.
And then Simmons and Serizawa. So we'll talk about Ren Serizawa and Walter Simmons in a little while.
Goodness.
But yeah, I mean, they were the ones that kind of supplied this stuff, these heaves, the kind of helicopter vehicles that were able to withstand this gravitational force
Yes.
that killed his brother. Which I was like, for someone whose brother was crushed by Hollow Earth gravity, it's like he seems to really trust these untested vehicles with putting everybody in them. And all right, let's go. They said it would work.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that was one of those things I scratched my head about. I'm not sure I'd want to go jump in it. I'd want to ask a few more questions first. I'd want to find out exactly how well tested they were, because I don't think they were well tested at all. They were just...
I don't think they'd have... It's like, we're just going to jump into the center of Earth's gravitational pull and see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah,
yes, there were some pretty powerful, vehicles, which Lind ended up knowing a lot about and knowing how to work them. So maybe there was a little bit of time pass. I don't know. But... Because, I mean, he knew that it had the right amount of power to, like, restart Kong's heart at the end. Which was really cool. It's kind of like a, nod to Ishiro Serizawa with Godzilla in King of the Monsters.
Yes.
And so it was this kind of, like, using this power to reawaken him. I was like, nuclear blast would be a bad idea with him. But, it's not as much of a sacrifice. But
yeah.
But it was still a kind of a cool nod. But then I love how, and this is just a personal nerdy note, is, dig into one of my quotes kind of here, but, asking like, but we're going to need enough power. And then he finishes her sentence of like, to light up Las Vegas. And coming from him after I just watched him play Randall Flagg in The Stand was fun.
Yes. I knew that you would bring that note, so I did not.
Yes.
I knew you would, because I thought the same exact thing. As soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, definitely. When that happened in the movie, I knew right away. I'm like, Pake's bringing that note to this. I know he is. I don't even have to write it down. Because, again, The Stand, we just finished watching The Stand like a month ago. Mm-hmm. So it's still real fresh.
Yep. So him referencing Las Vegas, I'm like, oh, there's Randall Flagg.
Yep.
Which all they had to do was just like comb down his hair and give him just like a real like bleh haircut, and they really changed him from like menacing villain to like, oh no, this is just some nerdy guy. Like he managed to pull off a very opposite role really well. So
yes, he did. He was smart though. I liked some of the things that he came up with. Like he had them shut the ship down because he knew that maybe if they played dead, Godzilla would think that he won and he'd leave.
Yeah.
So, he had some cool ideas when they couldn't use the ship anymore and they had to come up with another way to get Kong to Antarctica. He's like, oh, is he afraid of heights? Like, he had ideas. It's like he's thinking on his feet pretty well to come up with these other ideas. And I thought, he's kind of a clever guy.
Oh, for sure.
To me, he was the lead, but he wasn't, like, the lead that was being shoved down your throat. He was kind of the lead in an ensemble of people.
Yeah.
And I liked that.
The main focus, of course, was Godzilla and Kong.
Yes. Which I'm grateful for, because I love a good monster.
Yeah, and I noticed, in your behind the scenes, because you mentioned like the last time that the two of them were on screen together was in King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why with the titling. And so this kind of makes sense that maybe why Godzilla was quote unquote first build, top build, is like Godzilla versus Kong, because this was more of a Kong movie than a Godzilla movie.
Yes, it was.
Godzilla played a small part.
Yes.
In a movie that starts with the word Godzilla in the title. But, this was more focused on Kong.
Yeah.
And him finding his kind of ancient home and the connections that he had with people and what has happened to him over these past years since Skull Island and where he goes. This was a Kong movie.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. It definitely was.
So I was wondering about that. But his Godzilla's like first build. It's Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
But you gotta do what you gotta do to get people interested. But I was like, but it focused a lot more on Kong. Godzilla, honestly, wasn't that big of a kind of thing. I mean, he was very necessary for the Mechagodzilla story and to bring that together. But other than that, like the main focus, I really think was on kind of Kong and his growth and where he needed to go from where he was.
Oh my gosh. And we'll talk about Kong's growth later because Baby Kong is not around anymore. This is a fully mature, aged Kong that we saw.
Yes.
And so, yeah, baby Kong is all grown up. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I was excited to see him, you know, having seen him in Kong Skull Island, he was so much smaller, and now he's just ginormous. Yeah, so it's been about 60 years since we saw Kong last.
Mm-hmm.
From Kong Skull Island. So he's grown quite a bit, and I do have some of the stats on that to bring up later on. I liked Dr. Lind. I thought he was a stronger character than we saw in some of the other movies. Kong Skull Island is still my favorite film in this whole series. However, I do think Dr. Lind was a strong character. Out of all the Godzilla movies that we've seen, he's one of my favorite characters. I thought his heart, I like characters that are a little deeper and ones that have a good heart, and he definitely has a good heart.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely down with that.
All right. Well, talk about characters with a really good heart. I think it kind of ties in really with the next one that we talk about, which we mentioned her earlier with her connection with Dr. Lind, is Dr. Eileen Andrews. Yes. And what kind of, you know, her daughter, Gia, which, you know, we find out is more like adopted daughter, which makes sense. Yes. Apparently the native people of Skull Island.
The Iwi.
Yeah, I guess that's because we noticed, you know, that storm that they had to fly through in Skull Island is still there and raging around. And apparently it had gotten even worse.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the reason that the native people kind of ended up being wiped out pretty recently, because Gia's still really young.
Yes.
And she had lost her parents in that situation.
Yeah, I liked Rebecca Hall played Dr. Andrews. And she actually described her character as the Jane Goodall of Kong, which I thought was a great description of who Dr. Andrews is. Because she's very clear at the beginning. Godzilla's going to come for Kong if he feels Kong's presence. They kept Kong in that dome. They kept Godzilla from knowing anything about Kong. And with reason, when we saw that battle a little bit later on with the ships, I mean, Godzilla is going to go for Kong because all the other Titans bow to Godzilla.
Yeah.
Kong doesn't bow to anyone, according to Dr. Andrews.
He's a king of his own right. You got the king of the monsters, and you have King Kong.
Yes. And they have to live in harmony. In some way, they have to find some harmony. But she did continue to tell people, you know, to remind people, Kong is only safe because Godzilla doesn't know about him. If Godzilla senses his presence, he's going to come for Kong. And she continued to say that to all the important people so that they would understand. Yeah. And her heart, like we talked about with Dr. Lind, her heart's in the right place. She cares very much for her adopted daughter, Gia, who has this relationship with Kong that we don't see the extent of until a little bit later.
Yeah.
And that's when we find out that Gia's actually taught Kong sign language. Like, Kong knows how to communicate with her. They have a friendship that was so endearing to me. I mean, I loved Kong before. His friendship or relationship with Gia, it was so endearing. And, yeah, the fact that Gia is deaf, and the actress, I had to look into this after. Kaylee Hoddle, who plays Gia, is actually deaf.
Awesome.
Her parents and her older sister are also, but she has 3 younger siblings that are able to hear. And Alexander Skarsgård actually learned American Sign Language so he could easily communicate with her on set.
That is awesome.
And that just warmed me to him.
It's another reason to love Skarsgård.
Yeah, so that, I was endeared to him. I'm like, oh, what a wonderful thing. And there were other things that he did to kind of get in tune for this role, but that was one that just really stuck out to me.
Yeah. It's just really cool. Yeah, of course, then they have an actual young actress who is deaf. You know, we've talked about this before on A Quiet Place, how, like, really important it is for accurate representation for, you know, different disabilities or people groups or anything like that in these movies nowadays. That that it's great when we see more studios and directors and teams doing these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I like when they go the extra mile and really dig in to try to find the right actress to fit the role. And to me, it just comes across as so much more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because Kaylee Hoddle doesn't speak. So what you saw from her was facial responses, which to me was fantastic.
She was awesome.
I was all in on her character. Right from the beginning, she endears you. Like, she pulls you in and you can't help but just love this little girl and her relationship with this ginormous, again, I'm using that word, giant, Kong. It's just incredible. And I was blown away by that. I was blown away. I did not know what to expect in that relationship. I mean, I had seen in the previews Gia connecting with Kong, but I didn't know just how intense that was going to be until I watched this film. And now I'm just like, oh, I want to see what she's going to do next, because I think she's a talented little actress, and I hope there are more opportunities for her, because I think she has a bright future ahead of her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really liked her. Yeah, I think I haven't really dove in and looked at her filmography or anything, if she's done anything before, but it was really cool. I really liked her performance in this movie.
Yeah, she said a lot with her face, which we've talked about before when we talked about the character of Regan from A Quiet Place, like you mentioned.
Yes.
So I kind of grouped Dr. Andrews and Gia together because to me they were a dynamic duo. They were a tandem. Everywhere one went, the other one was there. Mm-hmm. And I love that Dr. Andrews treated Gia, this was her adopted daughter, but it was almost like Gia was also her assistant, her partner. She communicated with her, at a much higher level that you would think with a child. Mm-hmm. I just really liked their relationship as well. They just seemed like they had a really tight bond, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, when it came to stuff, dealing with Kong, it wasn't so much of, oh, this is my project, this is what I do, and, my daughter's here along with, no, like you said, she would defer to Gia on so many things. What do you think? Especially once the kind of secret came out that Kong could communicate through sign language, then it really became why, what does he say? What is he feeling about this? Let me know. And Gia kind of becomes the middle person.
She's in this communication. Yeah.
And it was very much deferring to her, okay. Because even when they tell, Dr. Andrews, we're going to have to tell him that his family's in there to make him go through. And she was like, I don't want to lie to him.
Right.
It's not worth that. And so when she goes to Gia, she's like, tell him that it could be. Yes. She doesn't lie to Gia either and say oh, nope, give him this information. She's very straightforward. We don't know, but tell him maybe.
Yeah.
That it could be this, and don't lie to him. Don't lead him on, but give him some kind of hope and sense of, this could be what the purpose of this is.
Absolutely. I mean, it could have put Gia at great risk for her to lie to Kong.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had that connection and he really trusted her. She really trusted him. It could have caused a major problem. And I like that Gia was, she stood up to them a few times and said, no, he's angry. He's upset. This is what's going on. And they didn't understand how she knew. Well, it's because he actually did tell her using sign language. Mm-hmm. So I thought that whole dynamic was one of the coolest parts of the story of this movie. There were some things that I wasn't so keen on, but that was not one of them. I really liked that piece.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else to say about them?
I really loved that Dr. Andrews is the one who says, we got to disorientate Godzilla. Let's use depth charges. No one else was thinking it. They're on a ship. She's the one that's having to do it. I'm like, what is it? Her and Linda are the only ones that can come up with ideas.
Right.
Because I feel like that's exactly what was happening. And I also loved that Gia could feel onto the side of the ship and realize that Godzilla was in the water coming. And then she ran to tell Dr. Andrews. I loved that. I just liked those nuanced things that could be seem realistic, you know, because she's in tune with vibration because she can't hear and she relies on vibration to really tell her what's going on. I mean, she felt it. None of them were feeling it.
Yeah, she's the one that, you know, I mentioned Dr. Lind kind of restarting Kong's heart. The reason they did that is because Gia is sitting there going, I can feel as he's laying here.
Yeah.
Next to me, his heartbeat is slowing. He's dying.
Yes. She's they were the three, to me, the smartest in this movie.
Yeah.
I liked that trio of characters. Feel like we're ready to move on to what I think are the next trio of characters.
Yeah. So it works. There's a good transition here. Another trio. But then, and I feel like I might let you down in this instance because you were talking about favorite characters. When you said that there's certain things that you didn't like about this movie, this next trio is a down point for me.
I questioned why they had to be involved.
Yes. And so, yeah, we were talking about Madison, Bernie, and Josh. And I will say, I was like, hey, sign of the times of 2021 that podcasts are a recognizable medium and totally solid plot point to a blockbuster film. So that's cool.
Yeah. Maybe I wanted to listen to whatever was on his Titan Truth podcast.
Yeah, I was not really into this side plot. I mean, they brought some of it around with tying it into the Mechagodzilla reveal and things like that. But most of it, I just really feel like it was just a weird excuse to come up with some reason to get Millie Bobby Brown to come back and reprise her role just because of her name and the star power behind it. I think that's the only reason they made this storyline happen the way that they did.
I feel similarly. I feel like they were trying to connect to the previous movie. And this was the way that they could do it because they brought in Kyle Chandler, who played her dad. And what was he?
That was another note. It's like I said, they brought in Millie Bobby Brown just to reprise her role, but she probably had more lines and stuff in this one than she did in Monsters. Oh my God. But so I mean, she ended up playing some of the role, but yeah, poor Kyle Chandler. Now that's the one that they really brought him back for no reason.
Oh my gosh!
One of my final notes I took in this movie is whenever he came back, at the end of the movie, and he's reunited with them. I was like, Kyle Chandler really had nothing to do in this movie.
No.
You could have taken him out completely and it wouldn't have changed a single thing.
Exactly. You know what my first thought was? Madison had more to do in this film aside from breathing.
Yeah.
And that ties back to Steve's comment.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, she had more to do, but wow. Yeah.
But it felt very forced to me.
It didn't fit seamlessly. That is for sure.
And it didn't fit with her character as well. Well, I don't know. I think about it because I was really not too sold or happy with her being super into all the kooky conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
Listening to the podcast, I get that much because she knows that government stuff has been real iffy when dealing with Godzilla before in the past. She's been a part of Monarch. She's been a part of all that. She's seen it. But then when she starts going off on all the bleach here to get rid of the trackers, the organic material tracking and all the fluoride in the tap water and all this stuff. I'm like, oh God.
It didn't need to happen.
Don't do this to this character because I thought she was smart. Which I know it's played off of, with Bernie the podcaster. It's a lot of it is comic relief. This is the comic relief side plot of this movie. And so I get that.
But I felt like it was kind of like I was watching another movie, and it was spliced in.
So detached from everything else.
Yeah, I thought they brought some humor. I thought there was a sense of adventure. I laughed that he has a flip phone. I wondered if it's because he's so worried about technology that he ends up with a flip phone because he can't be tracked. Sorry, Bernie, but I'm quite sure you still can be.
Yes. I mean, you were figured out easily by the guy that you buy bleach from. I was like,
Yes.
oh yeah, I can give you his address.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. I feel like they could have taken Madison, had her be working with her dad, and brought them in a different way that had something to do with the science.
yeah.
But they didn't have to do this because this really was like some National Lampoon's comedy trip to Hong Kong where they're messing around with skull crawlers and it didn't fit. It didn't fit.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Okay.
I
Cool.
that was one of the things, and I just rewatched it before we recorded tonight, and all I can say is it stuck out to me again. There were some things like she's the one who is Madison's the one that kept saying something is making Godzilla mad. Like something is happening. This is out of character, which I thought was good. But I feel
should have been pretty like obvious for anybody though. Like
yes,
knowing all the years of Godzilla, like I mentioned way earlier, it's like the fact that he attacked this one cybernetic base is like there should be a reason for that. Look into that place, not Godzilla. Like, but that should have been like anybody should have been able to figure that out.
They weren't thinking about it. Like it took a college student and her sidekick and a conspiracy theory podcast host to put these pieces together. Yeah. And I thought, please don't tell me they did this storyline just so Josh could pour water on the computer.
Right. Yeah, that was another big thing I had. Now, with the character of Josh, again, it's a hard one for me because I love Julian Dennison so much.
Oh, he was great.
He's hilarious, and I've seen a lot of his movies because he's a New Zealand actor.
Yep.
He's done work with Taika Waititi and some other stuff. Like, so I've seen him kind of grow up as a young actor and do a lot of really great films that I've really loved. And plus, he was in Deadpool 2.
Yes.
And was really fun in that. And so, he's got a great comedic, like, mind as an actor and great timing. And that's what his whole purpose in this movie was just to add to the, comic relief and the comedic stuff. But I feel like it was just, like, a horrible, like, underuse of him as an actor because I know he's capable of so much more than that.
Yeah, I feel like they if they wanted to include them in this film, there was a different way they could do it. And the way they did it, okay. Not my favorite part of the movie. Kind of like if you take all these scenes out, other than him throwing the water on it and Josh actually naming it Mecha or calling it Mecha.
Yeah, it's a robot Godzilla. No,
it's a mecha.
Mechagodzilla. Oh, God.
I'm like, am I sure that I'm watching Godzilla vs. Kong and it's not one of those rip-off movies?
Right.
Because that is something that would happen in the rip-off movie. So, yeah, I'm with you on this. I think that storyline, if they wanted to connect to the movie before, they could have found a better way to do it.
Definitely.
They could have left them out completely and fleshed out Ren Serizawa, who I was much more interested in when I was reading about, what characters are going to be in this movie. I was like, so I expected we were going to get something. This is Serizawa's son. Oh, yeah. Wow. No, got nothing. Not really.
So we focused on these characters way too much.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like the water, whether it's whiskey that he pours on there to short out the computer, which at least I gave them a little bit of props to where I was like, at least he goes in and is like, let me see if I can figure out the password. And I was like, if he manages to hack into Mechagodzilla, I might just turn this movie off right now and be done. Like,
because there's no way. And there was banter about that where he's talking about going to a summer camp and taking HTML, and then Bernie's giving him a hard time about it because HTML is like an older term.
Yeah, he was like, what is this summer camp in the 90s? Like, what was, which was great. Yeah. And so I did like that I was like, that he can't hack into it. Like, obviously he has this idea, like, let me try this, and like, obviously it's not going to work. Like, he doesn't even come anywhere near close. It's like, okay, at least they're that self-aware to be like, they're not that stupid to put that in. But then he's looking at it and it's like, well, don't I just pour all this whiskey on it and short it out? Which, okay, I'll give them more credit for that, because it's not like it shut down Mechagodzilla 100%, but it gave Kong just that, like, extra second to do something.
Yeah.
And it weakened Mechagodzilla enough to be destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to do a movie with these three doing some conspiracy theory chase down on something else, okay, make that movie.
Yeah.
But this is...
Yeah, because the actors, I like the actors.
Me too.
Like, yeah, I mean, the three of them are great, and they had great chemistry together.
Yeah.
They're a great comedic trio.
Yes.
Just cast them in something different where it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they were fun. They were humorous. They brought this sense of adventure, but it really wasn't necessary. It was kind of like a fluff.
Yeah. Except for one thing with the three of them that made me crack up laughing out loud for real so hard was when they first get, like, into the place in Hong Kong, and it's just all dark and quiet, and instead of being like, hello, 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 Bernie decides instead to check the echo by just going, ah! And that is just this scream, and it scares the hell out of both Josh and Madison. They'd be like, ah, what? And he's like, then you hear the echo, and he's like, oh, it's echoing here. That I thought was really funny. It did crack me up a lot. It was just him screaming to hear an echo.
The guy that played Bernie was great. I really liked him. I have not seen him in anything else, I don't think. But I'd like to, because I thought he did a good job. His character, there was nothing wrong with his character. There's nothing wrong with these characters. It's their story didn't really fit with what we were doing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
I did have to do a little IMDb search because I did not write it down somewhere. Yeah, Brian Tyree Henry.
Yes.
Is the name of that actor. Just so people can look that up if they need to.
Yeah. I really liked him.
So I was trying to think if I've seen him. Oh, he's a big role in the show Atlanta.
Yes.
Which I've only seen like 2 episodes of.
Yeah.
I need to go back and watch more of that because, yeah. But he hasn't done a lot of other stuff. He's got a few interesting roles, but yeah, not many things that I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we have to move on to who I call the next trio, I feel like we have to move on to the next trio, who I call the Apex Baddies. But baddies isn't really the word, because I feel like they weren't ever really fleshed out enough.
Yeah.
They were just kind of sketchy, questionable. Not like some of the other bad guys we've seen.
Well, I'll give Walter Simmons and Ren Sarazawa, I will say, could actually be quite real baddies if it wasn't for the fact that, if Mechagodzilla wasn't taken out by Kong, that could have ended the world.
Yes.
Once it kind of developed a mind of its own and nothing, because Godzilla would not have been able to stop it on his own. So no human being alive is going to be able to stop it on its own. So that could have been a pretty major thing. And it's really more their ineptitude that they didn't even think about the fact that, like, they're like, yeah, just get this power from Hollow Earth, get this core power, and we'll put it in there, and then we'll have control over it, not really realizing the extent that power had.
Well, I'm just going to say this. We now know what Alan Jonah did with Ghidorah's head.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I did like that they tied it in, that they took the skull, which apparently the DNA was still in there, where they could pull like the telepathic link that the heads communicated with out to use it to where Sarazawa could telepathically control Mechagodzilla. It's really interesting.
That was clever. I liked that concept. I feel like Simmons, I don't feel like he was I want to take over the world crazy. I feel like Maybe he did want to do something. I'm just not really sure.
It had to stem from like a distrust of Titans somewhere.
Yes.
To where he wanted to be able to have that power that the Titans had within their own hands.
Yes.
In case they needed to combat the Titans or so they could handle these problems on their own.
Yes. So I don't think he was evil. Because when I was putting my notes together, I'm thinking, here's the bad guy. But, I don't think he was evil. But I have to tell you, his daughter, she's a bitch. She tells him right from the start that she came to babysit. And while she might be super smart, she is also so arrogant that it is not becoming.
Yeah, it was. I didn't feel bad when she just kind of unceremoniously is taken out. I even have just in my notes, bye-bye, Maya Simmons. Serves you right, piss off and double-cross King Kong, and you get crushed.
That's right.
That's how that goes.
Well, she had to know that having them point the guns at Gia was not going to end well for her.
Oh, no.
That's his BFF. You better not be going there. Definitely not. So she pissed me off so many times. She was always calling Kong a monkey. She always had some smart-ass response to everything, and not in a fun way. In a bitchy, arrogant, I'm better than you way. Bullying way. I did not like it. And then there's Serizawa.
That breaks my heart. Like, I really... Because I didn't even know, like... I didn't catch it if they mentioned it early on that he was the son of Ishiro Serizawa.
Yes, they did.
But, but after I watched the movie, I went in, I had to do it because I was like, this is the last name. I think that's who that... And then it was like, yeah, it is. And so it made me really sad that I was like, he's nothing like his father.
No.
He's fighting to destroy Godzilla after his father sacrificed his life to save Godzilla.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if your father was here to see the person that you've become and what you're aligned with.
He'd be so disappointed.
Yeah. Which, we don't get a lot of mention of Ren in the earlier movies, in Godzilla or in King of the Monsters.
No.
So I have to assume that because of Ishiro's, connection to Godzilla, that their relationship probably had been strained for a long time. That probably was a cause of this.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. I also read that Ren didn't feel that his father heard him. Like, he had ideas and thoughts and didn't really feel like his father heard him. And that was something I read. It wasn't in the movie. And you could tell at the point where Simmons gets really reckless and says, okay, go, control. We've got the power. Go do it. And he's kind of like, wait, this power hasn't been harnessed. We haven't tried this before. We really should not, rush forward until we've tested it. And Simmons wanted nothing to do with that. And that ultimately caused both their demises. Yeah. Because Mecha took care of Simmons and then fried Ren's brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very just disappointing ending for Ren Serizawa, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Because, it's just his alliance with Apex is disappointing, and then the way he goes out is just very disappointing. Not to say that it's not a down point of the movie. I think it's an up point of the movie. The fact that they give us this character with such a lineage just for him to be the total opposite of what you would hope he would be. And I think it actually adds to the emotional point of the movie to be what a, not disappointed as a viewer, but as a fan, be what a disappointment in that character that that's what he chose to be.
Yes. After we got to meet his father and get to know his father over 2 movies and see that sacrifice in King of the Monsters, and you connect with him. And then you see this is what his son had decided to do. And where I could have seen, if Ren had followed in his father's footsteps, he might have been working with Madison's dad. They could have had this whole storyline where the 2 of them could have been working together to try to understand why Godzilla was doing this. Take the kids out of it. And then just have those 2 working together, trying to find things. Something a little more believable. I think that could have been really, an interesting road they could have taken, but they chose to do this, and in the end, Ren Serizawa died by electrocution. Very sad way to go.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any other notes on the three of them?
I do not. I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it.
All right. Well, what's next then, Pake?
Well, I think then we move on to the rest of the characters of this movie, but they would be the non-human characters.
Oh.
The monsters, the titans.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know...
The meat and potatoes of this monsterverse. Right?
Well, the opening of the movie really brought together the two stories through the images and the battle results, and they were putting these pictures and different things that had happened in the Monsterverse, which I really liked. I need to go back through, though, and watch it again and really pay attention.
Yeah, because I was a little confused. Does this mean that Godzilla's, like, wiping out and killing all the other Titans?
Yeah, I don't think
you know...
I think they bowed to him, so I think that was it. I think they all went
the way it's,
back.
like, defeated is, like, oh, like, as in, like, they've taken their place under his, like, leadership. But it also kind of, the way they set it up is just, like, bracket kind of thing. I was like, is he just going out and killing all other Titans now, and now Kong's next on his list? Like, what's...
I hope not, because I would have wanted to see those things.
Yeah.
Like, why is he killing them? Did they go up against him? I mean, did we miss a whole chunk of the story?
Right.
I mean, we could have. But I really need to go back and slow that down and, like, watch it again. So that I can have a better understanding. I wanted to do it before we recorded, but I didn't get to that, so I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah.
So, they did mention, though, the ancient rivalry between Godzilla versus Kong's kind. Like, they were in the old days that they fought, and Kong's kind was completely wiped out, and we've never seen another Godzilla other than Mecha. So you have to think that they wiped each other's entire population out, so it's just those two left.
Yeah.
So, and the one thing that stood out to me, if we talk about Godzilla, even though Kong, we know this is a Kong movie. In Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and even in the first Godzilla, we saw more of Godzilla's connection to humans, especially like Serizawa in King of the Monsters. I didn't see a lot of that in this. Didn't see any of it in this movie.
No. It was. That's why I was saying, like, he kind of played a small role in this movie, because it was really like his only purpose was he was after Mechagodzilla, and I was wondering, how does he know that this is being done? And that's when I realized. And then once I figured that, you know, when they show that they're using Ghidorah's head as like a power source, I was like, okay, he has a connection to that. That's how he knows. And so that was cool. But yeah, so that was like really his purpose in this movie, was his mission to take out what he maybe perceived as Ghidorah coming back. Yeah. And then realizing it was Mechagodzilla. And then Kong was just kind of like, oh, I need to take care of that problem on my way. Yeah. Not realizing Kong was going to be as much of a threat as he was to him. But
I know. And in the end, Kong really helped him take care of Mecha. So, yeah. One of the coolest things, though, that Godzilla did was when he drilled the hole from Hong Kong to Kong's, like, Hollow Earth throne room. I loved that. I thought that was so cool, seeing him rip through and break into that chamber. I really loved that. I figured they had to do something to get them to Hong Kong.
Right. Yeah, land and them kind of take the heave right up through there. And I was like, so I guess travel from Hollow Earth to Hong Kong is pretty easy. Yeah. After Godzilla, like, nuclear blasts a hole through the Earth. So that's cool. Yeah. You know?
Definitely. And yeah, I think Godzilla didn't really grow. I researched this a little bit. Godzilla hasn't really grown that much since the last film. However, Kong is no longer a baby. He was 104 feet tall in Skull Island. He's now 336 feet tall. So he grew 232 feet. He's a much bigger boy now. Yeah. I liked that they picked Antarctica to try to travel. I don't know if that is, like, where they knew that, like, that's where the opening is or whatever. But Antarctica is also where Ghidorah had been put. Yeah. So I thought, oh, that's kind of a nice little tie-in there.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I've already mentioned I love when he's flipping from one world to the other, like going from the floor to the ceiling. I thought that was super cool. The axe, I figured out through some research that it was made of old Godzilla dorsal plates. And I didn't see that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I have in my notes, I put little like quips sometimes. I just weapon upgrade. Kong has powered up. He's now equipped the ancient power axe. Level up for Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Godzilla supercharges that axe at the end. And Kong's able to make quick dispatch of Mecha after that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the matchup between them. So, I'll talk about that a little bit since that's kind of the title of the movie. It really is, because we talked about this when we covered the other movies before this one came out. And I was like, even if Kong gets so much bigger, like he's still a giant ape, like versus this like scaled monster dragon lizard thing with like nuclear breath. Like there's no comparison.
No.
There's no world that Kong beats Godzilla. And even after watching this movie, that still holds. I was like, no, there's no way. Like the axe was a helpful thing to kind of, absorb and block that energy. But if he didn't have that, yeah, there's no way Kong stands any chance. And so I think where they end it with Godzilla kind of remaining savior of the Earth while Kong goes home to Hollow Earth, I think is a really good way to do that.
Yeah, I liked the way it ended. I liked it that it was not a standoff, but it was more of a, okay, you do your thing, and I'm going to do my thing.
So there was a mutual respect.
Yes, I liked that.
With each other at the end. And actually, I knew that was kind of how it was going to be. Because I was waiting for it to happen. I was like, of course, Godzilla and Kong have their Martha moment. And, they both need to take out Mechagodzilla together. And, humanity and the world is their Martha. So when the world is saved, they can have this mutual respect with each other.
Yes.
Godzilla doesn't feel like he's being challenged anymore, and Kong just wants to go home, and he has a new home. And so it works.
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked that part. The monsters to me were the strongest part of this film. Really.
Yeah.
They were the strongest part. They were the part I liked the most. I was most invested. Was so concerned about Kong being, the underdog because I knew Godzilla could tear him to pieces. And yeah, I
most of their fights were Kong running away and evading the nuclear blast. That was, but he's got some strong right hooks though. I'll give him that. He could deliver quite a blow to the jaw of Godzilla if he needed to.
Yes. Yes. I was so worried. There were points, kind of transitioning from that into the mecha, what we know about Mechagodzilla. There were points when Mecha was holding Godzilla's mouth open that I was really concerned. Like, oh my God, is this really the last movie and they're going to rip him to pieces? I don't think I'm down for that. Yeah,
watching how Mechagodzilla was overpowering regular Godzilla so easily. Yeah. It was kind of rough to watch. I was like, oof, this is
not good.
This is not good.
No.
And the fact that, Kong was there. If it wasn't both of them working together, neither of them could have survived this.
Yeah. True.
And it's cool. Which, before I get into more Mechagodzilla specifically, I did have a couple other notes about Kong, mainly just some of the visuals, because I mentioned it earlier, so I wanted to make sure I touched on those. Is some of the coolest visuals were definitely with Kong, and then also with the fight. I just love the Hong Kong fight.
Me too.
Before Mechagodzilla showed up. I think the neon lights and everything was a really cool backdrop. It was a very unique backdrop for the fight between them. We don't see stuff like that often.
No, you don't.
And so it was really cool. But yeah, Kong had some great visuals. I think when he was on the aircraft carrier, and you see the from the perspective of one of the jets where it takes off as the whole thing is kind of bending up. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So you had two other ones. Yeah, him taking the axe and sitting on the throne. I was like, oh, the king is on his throne.
I loved that too.
That was really cool. And then of course there's a moment kind of during the fight after he like knocks out Godzilla and kind of wins round 2, as Lynn says. And he's sitting there, like he's holding on to like the top of one of the buildings there, and it's that very iconic King Kong on top of a building imagery where he's kind of holding on to the top with his feet on the side of it, and I was like, they like ripped that straight from the old like iconic King Kong imagery, and it's really cool that they were able to show that.
Yeah, I like when they pull those pieces in because it ties everything together. Because this movie, in the grand scheme of everything. This is film number 36 in the Godzilla saga. And it's the 12th film in the King Kong story. To be able to tie back into those with these little nuanced glimpses and specific moments like that, I really love that because it really pays tribute to the past and how far a story has come or films have come since those early movies. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Well, all right. Mechagodzilla. Let's say we were kind of moving into that. I don't know if I have too many other notes about that.
Yeah, I've only got a couple.
Yeah, because we've kind of covered a lot of my notes about him just in other conversation. But I did think, I remember them being like, oh, they're uploading, which I wasn't sure exactly how that worked. They just like took the power into like the little like drone spider thing while in Hollow Earth and somehow downloaded that power to the machine without actually having to take that piece of like crystal or whatever there. I don't know how that worked. That was weird. But
that's some sort of technology that we just do not have at this time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, it's like this is a really bad idea. Even before Mechagodzilla like took on its own like mechanical mind of its own, I was like, there's no way this is going to go well because they don't know what kind of power they're about to harness.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to like give it its own mind, but
I
knew something bad was going to happen. I was like, this doesn't end well because even everybody except for like the two Simmons are going like, this is not a good idea. We should maybe think for a second. Like you said, even Sarazawa was like, maybe we should check this out a little bit and know what we're dealing with before we just go in guns blazing.
Yeah, Simmons is like, nope, we're going to do it. And I'm just like, oh, R.I.P. both of you. Mm-hmm. Though, Ghidorah, I still think, even though it's Ghidorah's skull and it does have the DNA, I still think Ghidorah was part of this. Whether or not it was physically, there was some cackling when everything was short-circuiting and Ren is getting fried. There's like this Ghidorah-like cackling sound, which was
So you think like that power actually kind of revived Ghidorah?
I do, yeah.
And it was like Ghidorah taking over Mechagodzilla, which I like. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm choosing to believe. Mark, I know you're out there. Prove me wrong if you think that's a bad idea. However, I'm sticking to it.
I have a feeling Mark is probably on board with that idea, but we will talk to him about that probably after we finish recording this. Before anybody else even hears this, we will have talked to Mark about that.
Yeah. My only other thing that I had was I felt like Mecha was charging up to kill Godzilla the way that Godzilla killed the female Muto in the 2014 Godzilla. Like the way he was holding his jaws open and he was charging up. I just kept thinking, no, I don't want to see this. Please don't take him out. I don't want that to happen. And this is coming from someone who was never a big Godzilla fan, but in watching this series so close together, each movie, I now am just all in on Team Godzilla, Team Kong. I'm all in on it. Mm-hmm. I don't want anything to happen to them.
Yeah.
I don't want.
So it was good. I'm glad that, Kong was the one that was able to kind of finish off Mechagodzilla. That was really cool.
Loved
and it was actually, it was like oil spraying everywhere, but it looked like dark blood and like it was like very gruesome for being like a robot with oil. But I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I love how he like rips the head off with like the mechanical spine and everything. Yes. And I was like, off with your head, Mechagodzilla. I was like, but Kong, don't drink that oil. That would be bad for you. I know you like to drink the blood and eat the stuff after you decapitate other monsters, but you should probably leave that one alone.
I liked that when he ripped out the spine, it made me think of when Kong ripped out the skull crawlers. Yeah, when he ripped out the spine. Like, remember he had the photographer in his hand, and he reaches down and he grabs the spine and pulls it out. And I'm like, how are you not crushing her? Well, that is what it reminded me of. And I really liked it. I love those things that make me tie back. They're not, you don't have to throw a character in to tie back to another movie. There are other things you can do that are more effective. And this
I like the
that.
little nods.
Yeah. I like that.
For sure.
So those were all my notes I think I had on Mecha.
Cool. So I think the only other really notes that we have, like, to kind of go over, like, monster-wise, is we do get a couple of, like, fun little creatures and stuff in the Hollow Earth that I wanted to talk about. Like,
we do.
Those are really cool. And I said, I mentioned how excited I was when we saw Hollow Earth actually actualized. I realized and be like, oh my God, this is here.
It's
They're showing it. They're doing it.
It's so beautiful. Like, it. Oh.
Yeah. And I love how then they kind of, the first monster we see was kind of a quick transition from, like, you're, like, taking it all in and being like, wow, this is awesome, beautiful, look at the scenery, look at what all this is, and then just something flies out of the side and takes out one of the heaves, and you're like, what the fuck was that? And then you start seeing these, like, Hollow Earth flying snake dragon monster things.
Yes.
It's just like,
they're called Titanous Warbats. I actually had to go and dig and learn this stuff because they've got serpent-like bodies, red wings, fangs. To me, they look like flying snakes, and I'm like, I am not in on that because I do not like snakes. But they actually had a name for them they're called Titanous Warbats. So I thought that was cool.
I like that. Yeah, those were cool. And then I was like, of course, like, Kong got a little help, but mainly he could handle it and eat it. And so
he took care of it. He was hungry anyway. He needed the buffet.
Yeah, but there's a lot of cool little creatures. We saw, like, these, like, rock spider crab things.
Yeah.
And then a giant frog lizard that ate that.
Oh, did you call it a frog lizard too? Because that's what I called
did.
it.
I did. That's exactly what I called it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm reading off my notes. I have rock spider crab thing and then giant frog lizard. And then I also have a creepy spiny bird bat.
Oh, yes. That is actually called a hellhawk. It's a bat-like creature. And it's one that came down and carried people off and stepped on them or whatever.
Yes.
And then one made this noise, and all I could think of is when Dr. Grant realized the velociraptors were calling for help in Jurassic. I was just like, oh my God. It went, and I'm like, oh my God, they're calling for help.
Those were really cool looking. Like, I was trying to figure out, I was like, is it like a owl, vulture, eagle, hawk? Like, I was like, I don't know. It's just got this, like, almost like the face reminded me of, like, a baby bird. Like, with the bald, creepy.
Yeah.
Just because it focused on that one that was looking at them before it got taken out. And it was like, I was trying to decide. I was like, either the CGI was absolutely immaculate or there was some kind of practical effect used in that. I'm really not sure. I didn't look into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but it was good. Like, effects were really good.
Yes.
So those were called Hellhawks, and I think that's a perfect name for it.
Yeah, I like that.
And the only other thing we saw was we got to see some skull crawlers.
Yeah, we did get some skull crawlers in there. Yeah, because you're wondering, that was the one part of that, like, comic relief side plot that I didn't like, that did make me a little interested. I was like, okay, skullcrawler eggs, what does this have to do with things? And then it turned out they're just basically using them as, like, test, like, subjects, like, target practice for Mechagodzilla. Yeah. I was like, oh, great.
Yeah, not a fan. I don't like skullcrawlers, but I also don't want to see them torn to pieces. Mecha was not fun. So, yeah. Yeah, that was... Yeah, I think that's all I have. There weren't a lot of creatures, but I liked what we got to see. I kind of want to go back to Hollow Earth now and look around and see what other creatures live there.
I know, like, I'm hoping they do more with this series, but, I mean, obviously, it's got to be like a story worth telling, so it's got to be something. I don't know where they go from here.
And
but
please,
I'm open for it.
Please don't come back with a story and try to connect things that don't need to be connected.
Yeah.
Please don't. It's much better if you don't. We can live with this movie. It was lovely. We don't need to see you try to drag, Yeah. That's the end of that. rant.
All right. Well, before we get into your production notes and stuff, or any other extra notes that you have, I just have a few little things, literally 3 things that it was cool to see Skull Island again at the beginning.
Yes.
Even though it kind of turned out to be this weird, technologically contained kind of thing, which was, it was weird seeing people just being able to easily access Skull Island. I was like, that's not what I'm used to at this place.
Not at all.
But it was cool. And then I liked the opening credits because they've kind of following the theme of all the other movies with the redacted information kind of style.
Yeah.
With which part of me wanted to pause it and look at what, because you would see the words that they were redacting or covering for just a frame before they got covered.
Yes.
And part of me was I want to go through here and pause every half second just to find out what all of this says and see if there's anything hidden in there. But then I was I don't have that kind of patience. I'm not going to do it.
I want to analyze it. I did. Yeah. I was being such a nerd. I wanted to analyze every word.
Yep. And then, of course, the ship that everybody was on that Kong was chained to, I just had a note that I was that is one very strong, resilient ship.
Yes.
That it didn't get torn apart in all of that. It got flipped over and moved around and jumped on, that it's still fine. So that's...
I thought we were going on some weird Poseidon adventure trip with the ship spinning all around. Yeah, it was... Yeah, it was definitely... It also reminded me, too, of when Haley was spinning with the alligator. It was just going like that. I'm oh, goodness. Back in the movie Crawl.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But yeah, that is the end of all of my notes.
All right.
So what do you got?
All right. So for production notes, here are some. We've talked about a couple, so I won't have to. I won't dig into them again. The director, Wingard, likes to keep his film shorter, with Godzilla vs. Kong coming in at just under 2 hours. He said that an extra hour would not be of the Titans fighting. It would likely be more people talking about the monsters. It was not going to be some big dynamic, hour-long fight scene, which is what he thinks people would be expecting. He revisited, in preparation for this, he revisited Godzilla and Kong films that he grew up watching. He wanted to bring an emotional element to the monster film. He took interesting inspiration for each of the monsters. He thought and compared Godzilla to The Undertaker, the pro wrestling character and fearsome loner who comes and goes to take on enemies when he needs to. And for Kong, he linked to Bruce Willis's John McClane. Like Willis's good guy, Kong's in a little over his head, but he isn't totally outgunned. I thought that was super cool. Yeah. 4 digital effects studios were primarily responsible for the special effects: Moving Picture Company, Scanline, Luma Pictures, and Weta Digital, which they've done a lot of work on films that we've covered on this podcast before.
Weta.
It's Weta.
I've heard different.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're the New Zealand company.
Yes, they are.
I love anything that they've done, really. I'm almost willing to bet, without having any basis of knowing, and I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that Hellhawk design that I love so much was definitely one of their touches.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a feeling.
I bet, and I feel like we're going to have to dig into that. I actually did go look up how to pronounce it because I was worried that I was saying it wrong every time. And according to what I read, it's Weta. So that's what I'm going to stick with. The music is by Dutch composer Thomas Holkenborg, who's also known as Junkie XL. He had written music for Godzilla just for fun because he's a big fan, and he shared it with, I believe, the director, and was brought in to do this one. He also composed music for Mad Max Fury Road, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and the upcoming film Army of the Dead. And when he was putting some of the music together, he wanted a 10-foot bass drum brought in.
That's cool.
And they settled, I think, on an 8-foot one. But yeah, that was what he wanted. And we mentioned this earlier. Unlike other movies in the Monsterverse, there was no post-credit scene. So we're left hanging. Mm-hmm. Is this the end? Is it not the end?
We don't know. He said, I'm open to seeing more of the Monsterverse, but only if they feel like they've got more important story to tell.
Yeah. I don't want it a sequel for sequel's sake. Let's not do
Yes.
that. Godzilla and Kong deserve better than that. The story, the lore, the history deserves better than just well, let's rush this out for the fans. No, fans really want good quality films. So, yeah, please don't, unless you've got a good story.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
All right. Well, then I guess it is time to get into quotes.
Yes, I have 4.
And, yeah. I think I'm going to go first because you have, like, my only one.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm looking at your notes. And I'm going to take it so I actually have something to say.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't take very many notes. Now, I've mentioned some of the quotes throughout the coverage, so let me kind of go up. So I think, like, some of the ones that I have, definitely, like, the land getting, well, how's he with heights? How's Kong with heights? That one I liked just because it kind of, gives a little hint of, like, it's funny, but also, like, it's a good idea. Like we obviously can't stay in the water anymore, so what do we do? And so the only other ones I have is another one from Lind that I've mentioned that, but his exact quote is after Kong takes out Godzilla in their Hong Kong fight for just a little bit, just, knocks him down for a little bit. And Lind looks at it and goes, looks like round 2 goes to Kong.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. And then my last one that I wanted to go first so you didn't steal it from me is a hilarious line, though, from Bernie whenever they sneak in to the area and they're looking around.
I knew that was the one.
And Bernie just says, if this wasn't contributing to world destruction, this would be a great DJ booth.
Yes. I found that really funny. So I have 3. My first one was kind of Andrew's kind of kicking back a little bit at Maya. It was basically when Gia senses Godzilla's coming and she goes to tell her mother. They go to the bridge of the ship. He's coming for them anyway, even though they're not in Godzilla's waters. Lynn says, it looks like he's coming for us anyway. Andrew says, he's not coming for us. And then Maya responds with him, then dump him, dump the monkey. And Andrew said, how about we throw you off instead? And I loved that because I wanted to throw her off myself. My next one is when Madison and Josh go to the grocery store in, I think it's Chinatown, looking for the bleach because they're trying to find Bernie. Yeah. The poor grocery store worker says, is this another one of those internet challenge things? Because when I sold those kids those detergent pods, I didn't know they were going to eat them. I'm still dealing with the lawsuits from that.
I thought that was really funny.
I loved it. And my last one is Kong saved her. My last one is Andrews is talking to Lind about Gia. And this is what she had to say. Kong saved her. She had nowhere to go. I made a promise then and there to protect her. I think in some way he did the same.
Yeah, that was really good.
I thought that was really poignant.
Spoke a lot about, that connection and I think it really had to do with just Gia's, like, native heritage to being, part of Skull Island and growing up, being a native there. And then whatever happened to, like, wipe out pretty much all of those people except for her. It's kind of...
She's the last of the Iwi.
Kong has... Because even we see that in Skull Island, Kong has this connection to the people of Skull Island. So Gia being the last one, of course, there's going to be a very strong connection between the two of them.
Absolutely. We saw so much in Skull Island of his protection of that entire, tribe of people. And, of course, he and Gia are going to be, BFFs together. He's going to protect her.
Yes.
He couldn't protect the others. He's going to make sure he can protect her.
Yeah. All right. Ranking time. This will be interesting.
It always is, isn't it?
Yes. Who goes first? That's always the conundrum.
It never is, because you always make me go first.
Yes.
Because you want to feel better. If I give it a lower grade than you do, then you feel better. I don't know that I don't know that the grade I give it is going to be lower than yours. So, I guess I'll go first. I know that, yeah. Okay. So, I loved the monsters. I loved the monster fight. I loved the 3 characters. Is this my favorite movie of the Monsterverse? No. So I looked at the rankings I gave the other movies, and at the end of the day, I came in with an 8, which still puts it in the realm, but not as high. So why don't you tell us about your 6.7 that you're going to give it?
No, I did not. I know because I really, really liked this movie. The only downside to it was the entire Madison, Bernie, Josh side plot that still had some fun stuff. I mean, my quotes and stuff are from there, and there was some funny stuff. So I didn't hate it, but it did drag things down a little bit to where, out of the 4 movies, it is 3rd.
Mine as well. For me as well.
I think it goes, Skull Island's my favorite, and then King of the Monsters, this one, and then the first Godzilla, I think is. And so I did the same thing you did, where I looked at what I gave, as rankings to the other movies and kind of made sure it fell in those lines. And it did. And funny enough, I landed on an 8. Exactly where you did. So we are the same on this one.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I was afraid you were going to go way lower, and it was going to be the first time that we were so far apart.
No, I still really, really like this movie,
yeah.
And I think it's been getting a lot of high praise from fans who have been seeing it in theaters and HBO and stuff, and I think it deserves that because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot to like. There were some things I was just like, no, why'd you do that? But not many. Just a few.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was going to ask you what your ranking was for the 4 movies, and you just did it. And funny enough, it's the same. It's my ranking as well.
Yeah.
King of Monsters has to be higher just because I got to see Rodan, and I got to see Godzilla go nuclear, and Ghidorah, and so many things about that. So I had to go with that.
I mean, even if it's just Serizawa's sacrifice scene alone makes that movie special.
But Kong Skull Island is my favorite, and yeah. They would have really had to make major changes to this one as far as trying to live up to that. I mean, I still go back to Hiddleston running through the leaf wings with a sword, and yeah.
It's still the first thing I picture whenever I think of Skull Island. It really is. Probably will be forever.
Yeah, I think so as well. For me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think we did it justice.
For sure.
Pake, you know what that is.
I do. I'm actually... Okay, let me answer. I'm really interested to see what people say, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a good little bit of feedback this week. I'm super excited. And this being like a big blockbuster movie, I am excited to get some cool feedback. Of course, the first feedback we have is not for Godzilla vs. Kong, but like we said, if you have anything, even after we've released something, if you have some thoughts or finally get around to watching something, we always love to hear from you. So we do have our good friend Tony from Twitter reaching out to us about last week's episode with Deep Blue Sea, to which she had to say... I love a good shark movie. This one is pretty good. I've seen 2 and 3, and while 2 is just awful, 3 is lots of fun and worth watching.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Interesting.
That's cool. I didn't have any intention on watching either of them. Maybe it's something I can throw on in the background when I'm doing something else.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. I'm not sure.
Put a pin in that one.
Yeah. Not sure about that.
Yeah. But our Godzilla vs. Kong feedback this week, I'm really excited. We have voicemails. Yes, voicemails with an S at the end. We have 3 voicemails.
Yes, we do.
I'm super excited to get to those. And this first one comes from our good friend Eric. Good to hear from him. So let's see what he had to say.
Hey, Pake and Daphne. This is Eric. I wanted to call and leave some feedback for Godzilla vs. Kong. When I went into this movie, I was looking for it to do one thing. Kong versus Godzilla. And boy, did they give that bonus with Mechagodzilla. I was freaking stoked when he first popped up. That was cool. The movie did kind of come to a very odd, abrupt end, but overall, I've really been enjoying these I guess, Monsterverse movies from Legendary. They somehow made me really care about a giant reptile, and even Mothra in the Godzilla King of the Monsters. So I've really been enjoying this stuff, been enjoying your coverage. Thanks, guys. Keep it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate it. And yeah, they've been really fun. This series, I don't know, this might be kind of the end of it. They don't have anything in store or in mind for the future of this series, but yeah, they were a lot of fun, and maybe they'll do more with them. But thank you so much for listening along and giving us your thoughts, for sure.
Yeah, we definitely really appreciate it, and I'm personally hoping that we get something more from the Monsterverse, because I feel like there's a few little things here and there that are still untied, I guess, loose ends that need to be tied up. So I'm hoping that they do something, but if not, I'm really pleased with the way that things have gone with those 4 movies, and I'm glad that Pake suggested that we dig into them before Godzilla vs. Kong came out, because I hadn't seen any of the others other than the first one, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed it.
Cool. All right, our next bit of audio feedback, our next voicemail, is from our good friend Steve. He's live Steving it, and yeah, we're always excited to hear what he has to say with that.
I feel like we just have to jump into it.
All right, Pake and Daphne, it's time to live Steve Godzilla versus Kong. I'll make it through. I think that said Outpost 234. How many freaking Monarch outposts do they have? Lance Reddick is in this? I can't wait. I know I've watched this before. I'm sure I've seen him, but gosh. And we got the voice of John Goodman. I'm reminded of the line from the original Red Dawn movie when they talked about why World War III started, and Paris Booth says, 2 biggest kids on the block. Eventually they're going to fight. Honestly, I've never fully understood this plan. Every time I've watched this movie, which has been a few, you just wanted to get Kong out to attract Godzilla, so I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Hell, it goes to hell. Suddenly, 11 has knowledge that... How did she figure this out? She's 11.
It's interesting. The human plot of this now includes Kong because he can communicate. When did the storm happen? Because, was it, I guess the storm that killed all the native people except for the kid must have been before they put the containment sphere around it, right? It's air cavalry, son. Air mobile. We'll pick up Kong like a baby and take him wherever you want to go. Oh, is he drinking that thing's blood right out of his own skull? We haven't seen that before, right? So it's Godzilla versus Kong versus Pacific Rim. Oh. Wait, her name is Madison? Godzilla just dug a hole to China. Or I guess from China. Godzilla just did a judo flip of King Kong. He just Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon, his shoulder back into place. All right, that was really good. Yeah, so Kong is now the king of Hollow Earth. Later.
Thanks, Steve.
Awesome. Some classic live Steving. Love it.
Yeah, Steve, her name is Madison.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I like you calling her 11 for some reason, though. Just that's who she is.
Yeah. But my question, Steve, I have to ask you, do you think she did more than breathing in this episode? Or
she had more lines.
Yeah.
And the last one, it's going to be a little bit longer, and that is totally fine and expected because it is our good friend Mark. If you remember him from the Godzilla King of the Monsters episode, he came on and talked with us. So he's got a lot of Godzilla thoughts. And so I actually am really excited to see what he had to say and thought about this movie.
Yes, me too. So here we go.
Hey, Pake. Hey, Daphne. Mark here. I just want to give my little thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong. I found it very entertaining. I've really been looking forward to this particular movie. I really enjoyed it. And I loved my, being on for Godzilla King of the Monsters. So a couple of things based upon what I saw within the movie. And I think my theory of Godzilla looking for the third party, which was human, as being the other enemy, is true, because he kept like focusing his fire breath down into the earth, looking for what they were doing. And they were creating a Mechagodzilla, so apparently he had some sort of signature that he was looking for Ghidorah, that they were actually using for Mechagodzilla. And we saw that at the end. Kind of goofy aspects within the movie. The fact that, you know, Madison goes out and seeks this guy who's like a conspiracy theorist and works for this this company that is creating Mechagodzilla. And with her, is he Australian or New Zealand? I don't know. For the fact that, you know, that kid that we got from Deadpool 2, and it's pretty cute and interesting, very much quirky, almost a lot like what they did within, you know, the original Godzilla films. And I appreciated that it had that campiness to it. At least we didn't get Kong being glided in by the government with like these titanium or indestructible ropes to balloons to be flown in to destroy or attack Godzilla. But, you know, the fact that, you know, we got some really good kaiju moments and I really enjoyed it. And the goofiness that really did come through for me. And it took like 3 viewings of this movie to find out, because I saw it on YouTube and I had to watch for it. There's a scene, and I brought it up to Daphne on a Zoom call that we were doing, and Godzilla laughs at Kong when he falls down at a certain point, and it's like that, ha, 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 ha. And I'm like, wow, they actually did that in a legendary film. So it's there, and, you know, honestly, I did enjoy it for what it was. I loved the big kaiju battles. The story was very lacking, and it leaves me pondering, are they going to continue this because of what's going on? Because you see at the very end, Kong in the underground tunnels or whatever it is, the submersive earth or the tunnels on the earth. Who created that, man? Because you see a little door underneath his throne. What is that? So it just keeps me guessing and thinking, but yeah, I enjoyed it because, you know, come on, it's Godzilla, and that's who I am. I just love that. And the fact that the CG actually worked, yeah, to suspend your disbelief, and I really enjoyed the movie. So I'm looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are within this movie. So I look forward to your thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark, and thanks for your thoughts. Because, yeah, they were. I knew it was going to be fun. Because, yeah, I remember when you were on for King of the Monsters, that theory that you had about like it really being a human element being the big villain of this movie, you were dead on.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely appreciate hearing what you have to say, Mark. Since you're so immersed in Godzilla and the lore and the history, it's really cool to hear you break down, you know, what you were thinking as you watched it or after you watched it.
Yes. And you mentioned Julian Dennison, who played Josh, is, yes, New Zealand. He, if you want to go back, because, yeah, Deadpool 2 you mentioned he was in, which was great. But you want to see when he was younger, he did a Taika Waititi film in New Zealand called Hunt for the Wilder People with Sam Neill. So good. You definitely check that out. Just throwing that out there, not for you, Mark, and for everybody. I think it's on Netflix now, so definitely check it out.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, thanks everybody so much for your feedback. And anybody who's listening to this now, that if you do have some thoughts about what we've said about Godzilla versus Kong, and you have any thoughts, then definitely feel free to chime in and send us your feedback, even if it's a little bit later, like Tony did this week with Deep Blue Sea. So that's totally fine. And if anybody's got thoughts about Godzilla versus Kong or any other movie we've covered or you want us to cover or what we're covering next week, which we'll get to in a little bit, you can send that to our Facebook page at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And that's usually the best place to send us those voicemails, those voice files as well. Twitter at RFYL podcast and Instagram at runforyourlivespodcast. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends, share the love. You can send them or yourself or anybody else to runforyourlivespodcast.com, and you can get links to all of our social media podcast players. We're on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Audible, Pandora, everywhere, YouTube. So you can find links to everything and do that there. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a review, 5 stars. Show some love. We always appreciate it.
Yes, we most definitely do. Peg, would you like to let everyone know what's going on some of our favorite podcasts right now?
Yeah, definitely. Again, kind of it's the same things that have been going on the past couple of weeks. If you've been listening, then it's going to sound the same to you guys, but that's okay. Because it's a lot of good coverage, a lot of good stuff. So I'm always willing to plug it because it is good. I've been listening to them and they're wonderful. Of course, Panels to Pixels, which you can hear Mark and Steve over there, and they are talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is finishing this week. The finale is today. So definitely it's been some great coverage and can't wait to see what they say about that when that one's out. And then Mark and Jamie are covering Invincible, the Amazon Prime animated series from Robert Kirkman over there as well on Panels to Pixels. And then our good friend Derek is also covering Falcon and Winter Soldier with his TV podcast Industries. And then the Walking Dead cast is covering season 6, the back half of season 6 of Fear the Walking Dead right now. And if you loved hearing that voicemail from Eric earlier, he is on the newest or the most recent episode of Fear coverage on the Walking Dead cast this week. And it was awesome to listen to. Good job, Eric.
Yeah. I don't know if that was his first podcast that he's guested on, but he did a really great job.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, but speaking of what's coming up on podcasts, Daphne, why don't you tell everybody what's going on next week right here on Run for Your Lives?
Well, next week, we're investigating the sinister events in M. Night Shyamalan's 2008 film, The Happening. And you know what? The plants have had enough and are fighting back against their biggest threat, man.
Yes, that happening. We're doing it.
We have to.
Mm-hmm. If any of you are brave enough to dive back in and watch that one for it, go for it. And if not, please listen anyway, because I think we had a really fun time with just breaking down all of the insanity that is that movie.
The funny part, and you guys will hear this next week, is where we started before we recorded and where we ended up at the end of the podcast and what we were thinking. It's quite a journey. So I feel like you guys have to check it out to really, get a feel for it.
Yes. Hey, this podcast, we are going to be covering all kinds of stuff that fits in it, from blockbuster amazing movies to there's a reason people listen to the podcast, How Did This Get Made, right? So.
Absolutely. I mean, we did, after all, celebrate Thanksgiving with Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
So you can't be that surprised.
Sometimes you just got to go in with something that's maybe not good and just have fun with it.
Exactly. And we always try to have fun here at Run for Your Lives.
Definitely.
You know what? We've come to the end of another fun-filled, exciting episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pate.
And if you have to run from an enormous mechanical remote control reptile with a mind of its own, or someone else's, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.